Rainier Avenue Radio.
The 7th annual Jackson Street Jazz Walks virtual concert will be held February 27th and 28th at 7 p.m. It's free to the public with all donations benefiting the Central Area Senior Center. Join us for the Delvon Lamar Organ Trio, Eugenie Jones, Alex Dugdale, the Devon and Donovan Lewis Drumoff, and more. For more information, please visit jacksonstreetjazz.org. That's www.jacksonstreetjazz.org.
Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station.
This is Cindy Bright, the host of Heartbeat Radio.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time.
This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 73rd edition of
Hey,
Sports
y'all,
and Stuff
welcome
on
to
Rainier
Travelers
Avenue
Guides.
Radio Network.
It is Ron Richard Ferry Von Mother. You guys know me.
Dirty Harry.
Your home for information about the impact of the
And
coronavirus.
amongst many things that's difficult about this virus is that it
Well,
prevents
it's been
people from
devastating.
gathering. So
They're really heartbreaking stories of people who have.
There isn't anyone that isn't impacted.
shutting our schools down, including all athletic programs.
Your first-hand accounts.
We got here, took the test, and I found out that I was positive.
A lot of people who know me, I'm still the first person they know.
But it was almost like you were patient zero for South Seattle. Your stories of community coming together.
Partner very heavily with Tacoma Urban League, who is doing some amazing work in response.
We're doing things for small businesses. We're giving out loans for small businesses.
And so I think it's very important that we have leaders who feel the
I mean, I cannot tell you we're calling 20, 30, 40
This
members.
crisis in our community, we've been working to address it.
Rainier Avenue Radio, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
DJ Dirty John.
Karen Z with Rainier Avenue Radio.
Sergio McCool.
Rainier Avenue Radio.
RainierAvenueRadio.org. We got you covered. Global impact, global presence.
Broadcast. Welcome to RainierAvenueRadio.world and our weekly coverage of the impact of the communities. Continuation of our series. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us again here. And then again, now we are aware of the fact that we are and more folks listening internationally at 1.7.
This is Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
You were listening to the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm Asher. Kendra will be here momentarily. Today is Monday, February 22nd. The news on Rainier Avenue Radio is live every Monday from 6 to 6:30 p.m., providing you with current, trustworthy, useful news content focused on super service to the local South Seattle audience. We will not tell you what to think, but instead provide the basics for you to discern and decide for yourself. Tonight, we'll talk about anti-Asian attacks, multiple lawsuits, a Nazi guard's deportation, and the Mariners president's resignation. Oh no. Now, onto the local news. A new rapid COVID-19 testing pilot program will be getting underway in a partnership between Seattle Children's and 10 local school districts. Per Como News, the program will start in the Auburn School District and then expand to 9 other districts in March. The pilot program will eventually reach 139 schools, with approximately 6,000 staff and 12,000 students who will be tested weekly. A newly developed phone app will collect and report test results. Similar school testing pilots were underway in other parts of the country, and Representative Kim Schreier said she worked with the Department of Health and Human Services to provide 300,000 tests to Washington if a partner could be identified. Seattle Children's agreed to be that partner. There are growing concerns across the country about a recent string of violent crimes against Asian seniors. For Como News, in Renton, police say they are looking into one case this week where a woman allegedly called a young Asian American man a racial slur and threw a snowball at his car. The man filmed the confrontation and then posted it to YouTube. Authorities say frustrations about COVID-19 have sparked racist attacks around the country. Detective Valerie Carter said, quote, "Said a police department takes reports of hate crimes seriously and have a detective dedicated to investigating these types of cases. We encourage anyone who believes they're the victim of a crime, especially if they believe they've been targeted because of their race or national origin, to call 911 and make a report." A moderate 4.5 magnitude earthquake rattled underneath the Pacific Ocean off the Washington coast this morning. According to Como News, the quake began rumbling at 5:54 a.m. and was centered about 165 miles off of Nia Bay. It had a preliminary depth of about 6 miles. No impacts are expected from a quake of that small a magnitude, but small to moderate quakes are fairly common in that area as large fault lines run through that part of the ocean as well as part of the Pacific Ocean's Ring of Fire. A young girl is under arrest after she allegedly stabbed her father in the chest over the weekend. According to Como News, respondents to the case in the early afternoon on Saturday after a report of a disturbance. Medics rushed the man to the hospital. It's believed the wound is non-life-threatening. After investigating the stabbing, police arrested the girl for investigation of first-degree domestic violence assault. Her age was not immediately disclosed. Police say there was another child at home during the assault, but no one else was harmed. By the end of the month, nearly all uniformed Tacoma police officers will be using body-worn cameras. For Como News, the program that launched earlier this year has been accelerated after the public outcry that followed an officer driving his cruiser into a group of people that had blocked an intersection downtown last month. As of Saturday, 253 officers have been equipped with and trained on using the Axon cameras. That leaves just a handful that have yet to receive them. All patrol officers, as well as traffic officers, community liaison officers, and homeless outreach officers will wear the cameras. Critics of Tacoma police say it's a start, but the other measures need to be put in place to ensure real accountability. 3 people have filed a personal injury lawsuit against a Port of Skagit commissioner over alleged injuries sustained in a helicopter crash near Cypress Island. For Como News, helicopter passengers Christopher Niebauer, Hannah Niebauer, and Ashley Walker filed a civil complaint in Skagit County Superior Court against Kevin Ware and his company Peregrine Air, LLC. Peregrine. The lawsuit says during a 2019 photo shoot, the helicopter flown by Ware hit branches and entered the water. The plaintiffs seek an unspecified amount of compensation for economic damages, including medical expenses, and for pain and suffering. Ware denies the crash and resulting injuries were caused by his negligence. An Eastern Washington berry grower will pay $350,000 to State Attorney General Bob Ferguson's office due to a former manager's assaults and alleged sexual harassment of several female employees over the last 7 years. Per the Seattle Times, all the money will go to the women harmed while working at a 138-acre blueberry farm near the Tri-Cities operated by Great Columbia Berry Farms. $350,000? Whatever. Ferguson charged that the company violated the Washington law against discrimination and the Federal Civil Rights Act by letting the conduct continue. Great Columbia Berry Farms denied the state's allegations in the consent decree. Delayed shipments will keep several state and country-run sites closed at least until Tuesday in Washington. Per Patch.com, extreme winter weather caused vaccine deliveries across the nation. Stalled vaccine deliveries across the nation this week, complicating immunization efforts in Washington for several days. Over the weekend, officials announced 3 of the state's mass vaccination sites would remain closed through Monday. In a news release, Department of Health said delayed doses from Pfizer were expected Monday, and a backlog from Moderna should be cleared no later than Wednesday. While the mass vaccination site in Wenatchee has enough doses to stay open, Spokane, Ridgefield, and Kennewick locations will not open until Tuesday, provided enough doses arrive by today. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we come back with national news, you'll hear about multiple lawsuits and more. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the national news. A Houston area family whose son died during an extended power outage is suing their electricity provider and the agency that oversees most of Texas's energy grid. Per NPR, like millions of other people in Texas, the family was forced to live without power as a wave of record-setting cold temperatures hit the state. 11-year-old Christian Pavon died last Tuesday when the local temperatures dropped to 12 degrees. At the time, the family's home had been without electricity for 2 days. The lawsuit said the child, quote, died of hypothermia, and the family is asking for more than $100 million in damages. The family's attorney accuses energy providers of making decisions based on making profits rather than keeping customers safe. Entergy and other electricity providers in Texas began imposing rolling blackouts early last Monday after the state's grid operator issued an energy emergency declaration that cited sharply reduced power generation due to the winter storm.
In the past year, insurrectionists have breached the U.S. Capitol, and armed protesters have forced their way into state houses across the country. Per Patch.com, in Montana, a law signed Thursday allows anyone with a permit to bring a concealed firearm into the state house, reversing a decades-long ban. GOP-dominated Utah passed a law this month allowing people to carry concealed weapons in its capital and elsewhere in the state without a permit. Guns are allowed in state houses in some form in 21 states. 8 states allow only concealed firearms inside their capitals, while 2 states allow only open carry. Several other states are moving to restrict guns in their capitals. In Michigan, a state panel banned the open carry of guns after the January 6 riot in Washington, D.C. In Washington state, a measure that would ban open carry of guns in the Capitol and near permitted demonstrations has cleared a committee and is awaiting vote by the full Senate.
Dominion Voting Systems filed a defamation lawsuit against MyPillow and its CEO Mike Lindell on Monday, saying he spread false information that its voting machines rigged the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Dominion filed a suit in the federal court in Washington, D.C., seeking damages in excess of $1.3 billion. According to the complaint, Lindell, an ally of former President Donald Trump, knowingly participated in spreading disinformation that the Dominion's voting system stole the election in favor of President Biden. The company calls this the big lie. The complaint also alleges that MyPillow ran ads targeted at people who believed the conspiracy theories about the election outcome in order to profit. Social media giant Twitter suspended Lindell from its platform last month. He previously used his verified account to spread debunked theories about the election and widespread voter fraud. A Twitter spokesperson told NPR at the time the account was, quote, permanently suspended due to repeated violations of our civil integrity policy. It was not clear which post from Lindell led to his removal from the social media platform.
The U.S. Supreme Court agreed to examine the legality of one of former President Trump's hardline immigration laws that bars immigrants deemed likely to require government benefits from attaining legal permanent residency. Per Reuters, primarily at issue in the litigation is which immigrants would be eligible for legal permanent residency, also known as the green card. U.S. immigration law has long required officials to exclude people likely to become, quote-unquote, a public charge from permanent residency. Trump's policy expanded the public charge bar to anyone deemed likely to receive a much wider range of public benefits for more than the aggregate of 12 months over any 36-month period, including the Medicaid healthcare program, housing, and food assistance. A federal judge blocked the rule in 2019 for likely violations of federal law, and last August, the New York-based Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that decision.
The Supreme Court paved the way for a New York City prosecutor to obtain the former president's tax returns and other records as part of an accelerating criminal investigation. Per Reuters, the justices, without comment, rebuffed Trump's request to put on hold an October 7th lower court ruling directing Trump's longtime accounting firm, Mazars USA, to comply with a subpoena to turn over the materials to a grand jury convened. Trump issued a statement describing the investigation as part of, quote, the greatest political witch hunt in the history of our country, accusing New York Democrats of expending their energy on taking down a political opponent instead of tackling violent crimes. The Supreme Court's action does not require Trump to do anything. The records involved in the dispute were requested from a third party, not Trump himself.
COVID-19 long haulers are people who survive COVID-19 but have symptoms, sometimes debilitating symptoms, many months later. Disability advocates and lawmakers are calling on the Social Security Administration, or SSA, to study the issue, update their policies, and offer guidance for applicants. Advocates argued that long haulers qualify for protections under the Americans with Disability Act, which would afford them accommodations for things like housing and accessing government services. However, there are three things in general that you need to qualify for benefits. First, a medical diagnosis. Second, evidence that the condition affects your ability to work. And third, the disability has to last for a while. Since COVID-19 hasn't existed as a recognized disease for that long, this may be hard to prove. The SSA told NPR that the current disability policy rules should be sufficient for evaluating COVID-19 related applicants, though the agency didn't rule out taking additional action in the future. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we come back with global news, you'll hear about Nazi guards' deportation and more. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the global news. Today, the United States abruptly canceled plans to bring asylum seekers into Texas at 2 ports of entry, dashing the hopes of hundreds who have been waiting for months in Mexico under a Trump-era policy President Biden promised to unwind. Per Reuters, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, said in a statement that, quote, given current operational considerations, unquote, it could no longer say when it would begin bringing in migrants through ports in Brownsville and El Paso, Texas. The department said last week it would start accepting asylum seekers with active cases at those locations on Monday and Friday, respectively. Texas is recovering from a winter storm that knocked out power and water services across the state.
A 95-year-old Tennessee man has been deported to Germany, a guard at a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. Per NPR, Frederick Karl Berger was sent to Germany because he participated in Nazi-sponsored acts of persecution while serving as an armed guard in the Neuengamme concentration camp near Meppen. Neuengamme? I don't know that one. In 1945, Berger, who lived in the U.S. since 1959, was flown out of the country on Saturday and has landed in Frankfurt. The deportation came after a judge in a 2-day trial in February 2020 concluded that Meppen's prisoners were held during the winter of 1945 in atrocious conditions that were exploited for outdoor forced labor. I mean, obviously. The court also found that Berger helped guard the prisoners when they were forced to evacuate the camp in a nearly 2-week trip under inhumane conditions.
A fifth night of protests in Barcelona over the arrest of a rapper convicted of criticizing the country's monarchy and glorifying a separatist group turned violent Saturday, with protesters throwing objects at police, setting fires, and looting and vandalizing many luxury shops. Per NPR, police arrested Pablo Hasél last Tuesday for a 2018 conviction under Spain's public security law, which bans the glorification of terrorist groups and insults the Spanish monarchy. His arrest over allegedly politically inflammatory lyrics and social media posts set off days of protests and sparked a debate over freedom of expression. Thousands took to the streets Saturday night, protesting the conviction and 9-month sentence. At least 31 people were arrested in Barcelona on charges of looting and public disorder. 2 others were also arrested in the city of Tarragona and one in Lleida.
7 workers with Niger's election commission were killed in a landmine explosion in Dargol during a day of voting that's expected to bring the country's first democratic transition of power since becoming an independent nation. Per NPR, Dargol is in the western state of Tillabéri, where Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali meet. Armed groups with links to Al-Qaeda and ISIS have strengthened their foothold in the region and launched frequent attacks. Suspected Islamist militants killed at least 100 people in 2 towns in western Niger in January in the worst violence in recent memory. With concerns over regular attacks, the West African country has increased security for Sunday's runoff between governing party candidate Mohamed Bazoum and one-time former president Mahamadou Ousmane. Thousands of soldiers have been deployed nationwide.
Italy's ambassador to the Democratic Republic of Congo was killed today along with his bodyguard and a World Food Program driver when their convoy was attacked in the east of the country. Per Reuters, the assailants stopped the convoy by firing warning shots, killed the Congolese driver, and were leading the passengers into the forest when park rangers opened fire. The Italian ambassador, 43-year-old Luca Attanasio, was hit in the abdomen and died several hours later at the UN hospital in the regional capital Goma. Italy said Attanasio's bodyguard, 30-year-old Vittorio Iavacchi, also died in the attack. The driver was named by a security source and local rights activist Mustafa Milambo. There was no immediate claim of responsibility. Congo's Interior Ministry blamed a Hutu militia called the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, or FDLR.
The corruption trial of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will resume only after voters head to the polls to pass judgment on his leadership next month. Per Reuters, Netanyahu was indicted in 2019 in long-running cases involving gifts from millionaire friends and for allegedly seeking regulatory favors for media tycoons in return for favorable coverage. The charges against him have been a central issue during 3 elections in which no clear winner emerged. Israel will hold its 4th parliamentary election in 2 years on March 23rd. This month, he pleaded not guilty between a 3-judge panel in a heavily guarded Jerusalem district court. The court ruled that evidence in the trial will be heard starting on April 5th. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we come back with sport news, you'll hear about the Mariners' president's resignation and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the sports news. Swansea forward Jordan Morris will miss the rest of the English season because of a serious left knee injury. Per Como News, the second division club says Morris has, quote, significant ligament damage, unquote, after tearing his ACL. The United States national team player was sketched off the field in the 4-1 loss at Huddersfield. Morris moved on loan to Swansea in January from the Seattle Sounders. He was due to stay through the end of the season. Swansea coach Steve Cooper says Morris has a, quote, long road back to recovery, unquote.
Seattle Mariners CEO and team president Kevin Mather announced he has resigned his position as president and CEO of the team following comments he made during a recent online event where he expressed opinions about organizational strategy, personnel moves, and club finances. For Como News, Mather's comments came in a speech at the Bellevue, Washington Breakfast Rotary Club on February 5th and were posted online over the weekend. Mather addressed the team's payroll and watching the financial bottom line. He said he believed top prospects Jared Kelenic and Logan Gilbert likely will not start the season with the team as a way to manipulate their major league service time and keep them under club control longer. And Mather made disparaging comments about former pitcher Hisashi Iwakuma's English, who recently rejoined the team as a special assignment coach. The blowback was swift, prompting his resignation, which was tweeted today around 1 p.m. by John Stanton, the team's chairman and managing partner.
Four-time Pro Bowl guard Mike Iupati, who spent the last 2 years with the Seattle Seahawks, is retiring after 11 seasons in the NFL. Iupati announced his decision in an interview with Spokane newspaper The Spokesman Review, saying, quote, "My body was telling me it was time to close the door," unquote. Per ESPN, the 33-year-old was a first-time All-Pro in 2012 with the San Francisco 49ers, who drafted him 17th overall out of Idaho in 2010. He made 3 Pro Bowls in 5 seasons with the 49ers and 1 in 4 seasons with the Arizona Cardinals. He then played on consecutive 1-year deals with the Seahawks, starting 25 games. Iupati missed 6 games in 2020 while dealing with injuries to his knee, back, and neck. Seahawks coach Pete Carroll referred to Iupati's late season neck injury as a stinger and said it was something he had dealt with earlier in his career. According to the Spokesman Review, quote, "A chronic neck condition convinced him he needed to give up the game," unquote.
UConn remained the #1 team in the Associated Press women's college basketball poll after blowing out its 2 opponents last week. Per ESPN, the Huskies received 28 of 30 first-place votes Monday from a media panel after holding St. John's and Xavier to 32 points apiece in routes. NC State returned to the #2 spot, and Texas A&M climbed to 3rd after South Carolina and Louisville, the previous 2nd and 3rd ranked teams, lost games. The Wolfpack had another 2-week run at #2 last month. It's the highest ranking for the Aggies, who received 1 first-place vote since the 2008-2009 season, when they were 3rd for 3 weeks. Coach Gary Blair's team can win the SEC regular season title with victories over Alabama on Thursday and South Carolina on Sunday. The Gamecocks fell to 5th after losing to Tennessee. Stanford received their remaining first-place vote and moved up to #4 in the poll. Louisville dropped to #6 after losing at Florida State on Sunday. The Cardinals were followed by Baylor, Maryland, Arizona, and UCLA.
Gonzaga's bid for a wire-to-wire run at #1 keeps chugging along. Per ESPN, Baylor is still right there with the Zags. Gonzaga received 60 first-place votes from a media panel in the Associated Press men's college basketball poll released today, picking up 1 vote from last week. The second-ranked Bears received the other 4 first-place votes in a week of little change.
One of the biggest brands in college football isn't yet sure whether it wants to be included in the revitalized EA Sports college football video game when it returns to market. For ESPN, University of Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick said his school will not provide its name, logos, and other branding property to EA Sports for the game until new rules that determine whether athletes will be able to receive a cut of the game's profits are finalized. The NCAA has indicated that it intends to change its rules to allow college athletes the ability to make money from some types of endorsement deals. Federal and state lawmakers have also pushed legislation that would open up similar opportunities, some of which are scheduled to go into effect as early as this summer. In order for athletes to receive money from a video game, they would likely need the ability to negotiate as a collective group on a price for the use of their names, images, and likeness. It's not clear whether future rules will allow these types of group licensing arrangements. The NCAA group working on these particular rule changes has thus far been opposed to allowing group licensing.
And now it's time to go over tonight's show plugs. For the last week of Black History Month, Rainier Avenue Radio has more upcoming events. On Tuesday, February 23rd, from 5:30 to 6 is the Conversations in Black by Tina on Tech. This week, the Black Digital Divide. Also on Tuesday from 7:30 to 8 is the Chicago Stepping by Styles of Stepping Dance exhibition. You can tune in to our show on Wednesday for more events.
This has been the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Would you like to see when your favorite Rainier Avenue Radio show comes on? Check out